Hey y'all, welcome back to the Venus Report. I am Kate. I am a somatic embodiment coach and artist.
And my name is Liz. I am a content producer and studying herbalist focused on seasonality, and this is Astrology Unhinged.
So, this is our bi weekly podcast where we talk about all things astrology, business, entrepreneurship, lifestyle, meditation, all the things. If there's more, you can chime in. But
Yes.
here we are. We're back, and it's October.
Yeah, and I love October. It
October's my
is one of my
favorite.
favorite months. Kate's
Me
birthday is
too.
at the end of the month.
So, we had a full moon this past week in Aries. This was
Yeah.
on Sunday, or no, on Friday, the 29th. I felt some big energy. How did you feel? I want to know your experience. We can go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like anything that happens with Aries always brings kind of like a hyper energy for me because Aries rules the sixth house for me, and then I have Mars in Virgo as well. So I have like a mutual connection with just this like Virgo Aries energy. So it's like Mars and Mercury are always doing the most whenever they meet. Whether it's like just a planet in Aries or a planet in Virgo that's accessing my Mars placement, I always sense just this like hyper energy. But specifically when planets are in Aries, it's always in my sixth house. And I am obviously, and this is kind of the conversation today, I'm very like fixated on work and I like organize my days really strategically. And I just feel like every time there's like a full moon or the sun is in Aries, I am like hyper in that area. So it wasn't really anything specific that happened. It just felt very, it felt like everything was coming to a culmination in my work and things are changing and things are like moving. So it definitely felt like an initiative movement
Mm.
towards my work right now. Like things are finishing up and I'm about to like launch my website, my new website, and launch new services and like a newsletter and a blog like all at once. So that's it feels like
Dang.
that's because this is probably the last full moon until all of that will be a thing. So, yeah,
Hmm.
that was kind of my experience. What about you?
So this was in Aries. So Aries rules my fourth house of home and family and lineage.
Mm,
And I am definitely redefining what home feels like and is to me. Also, with the Libra
yeah.
sun, the sun being in Libra opposite the Aries moon, it felt like relationships were a big theme. And like what relationships feel like home to me, what dynamics feel regulating and regenerative, like
Mm,
for my life. And there was a light shed on that for sure. And as the full moon
yeah.
window like came and went, and now the moon is like kind of coming back down from that energy, it just felt like so much has come to light in terms of like what I need in that realm of my life. So we will also
Wow.
want to know how like all of you listening have experienced this last full moon and what your rising, what your sun is,
Hmm.
and how this has affected
Yeah.
because the eclipses will be happening on Aries and Libra throughout all of October. So now that we're in October, we
Hmm.
have an eclipse on the 14th, we have an eclipse on the 28th, and they're both solar and lunar eclipses, and
Oh,
they'll be happening on Aries Libra axis with the nodes there. So there'll be a huge theme of like relationships. Yeah.
wow. Didn't we have an eclipse last year on your birthday? The 28th?
There was last year there were eclipses on the Scorpio Taurus axis in October as well. And actually, I might be
Right.
making a mistake because the eclipse on the 14th, or no, the eclipse on the
I
28th
think
will
that's right.
also be in Scorpio Taurus, but it'll be the last one for a long time.
Hmm.
So that'll be the last one in that
Yeah.
series. So that's the question. Like, what are we letting go of in terms of our Scorpio Taurus placements? And if you have any planets in Scorpio Taurus, if you've got sun, moon, if you've got rising, like what's going on in your life? And Liz, I want to ask you that, but like, what are you tying up in that part? So where does
Yeah.
Scorpio Taurus land for you?
Yeah. Scorpio Taurus is my first house, seventh house axis. And yeah, I can definitely say relationships have a new meaning to me now. Like
In what way?
from the time that these eclipses started. Like they're just I feel like a new integration, which is like this is just totally like textbook of first house, seventh house. But it's like I feel a new definition of how I identify in relationships. Like there's like a new way that I perceive myself in relationships. And then that also plays a role in how I also see relationships. Do you know what I mean? Like there's there's just a new it's almost like a new character has been defined in me when it comes to all relationships. And I
So
feel like
I want to
it's
know.
something that I've never touched on.
So who's that character? I'm curious, like what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, definitely somebody that's more like open, like who understands communication better. Like I'm as in the character who I was before, I feel like was somebody who was the younger version who like didn't have the mental or emotional mainly capacity to understand how communication is so important in relationships. And now I'm like it almost feels like a Saturn return happened because now I'm like I just feel like I'm more mature in terms of my communication style, especially in like especially just understanding what make other people feel like cared for. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like I've
Mm.
never had that like cognition before. I was always just like, oh, like this is just like how it is. But like, there's obviously any relationship requires like this understanding of receptivity that I feel like I wasn't
Mhm.
aware of before, as much as I am now.
That's huge. Communication is huge.
Yeah.
Like it's so
What
important to
about
be able
you?
to like I feel like my communication style has shifted in literally the past like couple days within relationships and the ones that are most
Yeah.
important to me in my life. And I'm coming to this place where I'm like, oh, I need to like tell somebody what my needs are. And that feels weird because I'm like, no, they should
Mm-hmm.
just be able to read my mind. But that's not a thing. Like,
Yeah.
duh. So
Yeah.
asking for what you need is also a test in your own confidence. Because if you are not confident
Mm-hmm.
in yourself and you're not like standing strong in your own being, you can't ask for what you need because it feels strange. You're like, I think I need this, but I shouldn't even need this. And there's a whole like dialogue around not thinking you don't need something when you're like,
Yeah.
you're the only one who can communicate what it is you need within any relationship and
Hence
be
why it's so
willing to
important
talk
to be
about it.
good. Yeah. It's so important to be a good communicator. And I feel like maybe that's coming up for you, the confidence piece, because you have a 10th house sun, right?
I do. Yeah.
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 I feel like that's a thing. What about you
Mm.
though? What have you learned with the Scorpio Taurus axis with your that's 10th house?
Oh,
Uh,
so it's actually rules my 11th house in
oh, okay.
Placidus tropical. So Scorpio's in my 11th, Taurus is in my 5th, and I
Mm,
can see over the past eclipse series last year, last October, I was leading a retreat in Portugal, and it was my first ever yoga retreat actually, and there was really intense energy, and because I was leading a retreat, I could feel all the intense energies like really, really magnified. It was like they were under a magnifying glass because I was in that space leading others through deep work and movement and stuff like that. And Liz was there on the retreat as well. But I can see the
It was
themes
awesome.
of, yeah, I can see the themes of friends and networks and groups of people that I have been involved with and have identified myself identity with falling away. Scorpio, right? The South Node is was there, and Taurus rules my fifth house, which has to do with creativity and how I express my heart. And I've been having a big, huge, huge heart opening, healing journey experience throughout the past like 5 years, but really recently as well has really opened up my heart. And I've been working with a lot of heart medicines like cacao and other herbs,
Mm.
which we can talk about too. But this journey of opening to my creative essence and being confident in who I want to be creatively, because I'm such a creative entrepreneurial mindset type of person where like I'm not ready to have
Mm-hmm.
kids yet. I'm ready to create my business. I'm ready to move forward in my songwriting and in my music. And that feels the most important. And so the eclipses were happening, like the North Node has been in Taurus. It just moved recently into Aries Libra, but it was in Taurus and it was happening on that axis. So the North Node was pointing me more toward that creative expression and the Taurian, like, aesthetic of it all as well, and the sensory experience
Mm-hmm.
of it all, which feels very healing.
Wow.
And then the South Node in Scorpio has been telling me and showing me that it's time to release the groups of people who I have identified with over the last like 5 years or so, which has been specifically like people in restaurants that I've worked with. And I love these people, but there's specific groups that I have been very obviously like moving away from. And it was like kind of like it ripped the band-aid off and it was like, you're no longer a part of this group. You kind of never were. And here you are
Mm.
in really in where you're supposed to be within a community, within like heart-centered living. And that's scary. Like it's been fucking scary
Yeah.
and sad and has felt like I'm like almost like ditching some people. But in reality, like those people were never
Mm.
really the closest. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I'm feeling that on a deep level.
Yeah.
And so this last eclipse will be kind of hopefully tying up some knots and bringing in the last of what needs to be seen in regards to those, in regards to moving forward past all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that you say like those little details about just like where the South Node and where the North Node actually is, it makes a lot of sense. Like when I put it into context of my experience, because it's like I feel like I've been constantly, I guess, and don't eclipses the dynamic. It lasts like 18 years, right? It's like another 18 years until, or something like that, until it's back at the Scorpio Taurus axis.
Yeah, I think
Something.
it won't be a long
Uh,
time until it's back there.
yeah, so technically, it feels like things have been very fixated on like the self. Like in the last maybe 6 years, it feels like this self development, self actualization is like so predominant in my experience. And it just makes a lot of sense that everything is now shifting now for me into my 12th and 6th house, but it was in the first and seventh. And if the seventh is Taurus, then that means it was like I'm heading more, I'm wanting, like the soul is wanting to move more towards like the other and be less focused on self development. Now we're shifting into like that half of the year where it's very much fixated on your relationship with everything else outside of you. So that really hits now that you put that into
So,
perspective.
so now you're moving into the 12th. So, what rules the 12th house
Yeah.
for you?
Libra. So right now
Libra.
it's like and it's weird. There's a lot that I've noticed with the 12th, even already just the sun being here. I feel like, and this may be a message for people, like if you're aware of, if you find an awareness in your day to day that really coincides with like astrology, which I know for a fact Kate and I are just like, we just like know by heart where the sun is in our chart. Like I'm just like, oh my God, the sun is now in the 12th house for like a month, and now I'm just gonna notice all the things happening. And some might be like, oh, you're only noticing it because you know it. I tend to believe that it's just a simple awareness, and then everything else coming up is just kind of like, yeah, that's a theme. It's like that's a thing, you know? So I've just
Mm.
noticed that these like there's like blind spots, and it's like it's not in anything in particular. It's not like an overall theme in a certain aspect of my life. It's just like certain and I've heard people describe it this way, but like you can't really touch on it, but you know something is there, whether it's like just a lingering feeling or a thought, and it feels almost just kind of like, I don't know what this feeling is, but let's get rid of it. But it's definitely there in moments like I'm about to basically go on a move. I'm moving states soon, and there's like a lot coming up that is like, oh, it's like the more I think about the process of moving, the more I'm like, oh yeah, like all of that has to happen and all of this has to happen, and you can tell, you can like sense that there's even just more. There's more beyond the surface. There's more to uncover. And yeah, it's just an interesting experience. I feel like it's happening in not just that aspect, but in a lot of other areas of life. These blind spots that are like showing themselves, or yeah.
You know what's interesting about that is because, well, because Libra's in your 12th and you're uncovering so much subconscious content. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like what I want to also touch on what you mentioned before about like knowing that that the sun right now is moving through your 12th house. Does that
Hmm.
affect how you see your process? And I think it does. And I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything wrong with that because then your inner process of self actualization, which is a lifelong journey, becomes conscious. And because we are absolutely connected to the cosmos, no matter what we believe, like we
Yeah.
are connected to the gravitational forces and we are one with those things in the sky that are way, way, way out of our atmosphere. Like we are connected to all of it. So
Hmm.
obviously it has an effect on us. So just knowing consciously that the sun is moving through your 12th house, what can you uncover unconsciously? What can you allow space for? Because you know that you'll be having some sort of transformational experience within this realm of your life, which are the
Hmm.
houses. So how does that actually affect your willingness and your ability to transform through the transit?
I mean,
Like, this is a
yeah.
big
And I
question.
want to like, yeah, I want to even just attempt to answer. I I feel like with knowing simply just that the 12th house is just an interesting house to talk about. And I think it's just, I think if your sun is going through the 12th house, if you are a Scorpio rising right now, this would be just a helpful thing to do. But it's all about accessing, to me, like what does Pisces energy mean to me? Because and the 12th house is such an interesting spot as well, because we are now like, this is from Libra into Scorpio is my like, it's almost my rebirth moment in a weird way.
Mm,
Hence why I almost feel like the ascendant is more important for people in moments than like the sun and moon sign, because I do
I
feel
agree.
like the area, yeah, like the area of the 12th house and the first house is a rebirth moment no matter what for you. And that's always going to affect it's, I think, not, maybe not always. I think it's always, if you are conscious and aware of it, like we're saying, it could just give you more context into why certain things feel certain ways in your life right now. Like for instance, it feels like a completely like rebirth moment for me right now. I'm moving. I just got a new car. I'm
Ooh.
like revamping something that is now going to look totally different for my business. So it's like all of it is like totally perfect on timing. And obviously, I'm like a 3-degree Scorpio rising exact, so like it's like gonna be right at the time that like everything is launching that the sun will be on my ascendant. So it's
Mm.
just things like, it's just certain things that you just want to have an awareness to, in my opinion, especially if you're into astrology. I think it's actually more helpful. And yes, sometimes you can catch yourself being like, "Oh, this is happening because of this." And maybe it's just a coincidence, and you always have to consider that because you don't want to just like totally lose sight of like free will and everything that happens in life. But I think it's also a really good practice to learn also just the energies of the year. Like I find so much value in understanding the idea that okay, the sun is in my house of Pisces, but it's in Libra. Oh, Pisces, or Venus is exalted in Pisces. Interesting. So I might see themes, very nuanced themes of like Venus exalted in Pisces. Like it could go that deep if you really want to. And I just think it adds more insight, and it also just gives you more of a well-rounded viewpoint of your present like
Mm.
experiences.
Yes. So I feel like with the each transit, what we're doing is essentially documenting our transformation and our growth in life. And if you're growth minded, like we both are, then the transits provide you with a blueprint of how it is that you are transforming. And it gives you a mirror to say, oh, yeah, like this is actually, it almost like validates the transformations that you can see and feel happening in your life, like on a very subconscious level, or it's very like out there and it's tangible. But it almost
Mm-hmm.
validates it and it gives you like, okay, give space for this to happen because this is really happening. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
just you feel it and then you kind of like turn away from it. You don't, that's what embodiment is. That's
Yeah.
really what it is. It's leaning into what you're being asked by the universe to change, to transform, to embody, to live into, to let go
Mm-hmm.
of.
Yeah.
And that's why astrology transits are so transformational and important to just observe. It's not that you we have to tell you like you get a reading and the astrologer tells you like, "Oh, you're going to go through this thing." It's more of like a
Mm.
didactic conversation where the person is asking you like, "What are you feeling in this part of your life?" Because there's some shifts happening planetarily. And what does that look like for you? Because I don't know what that looks like for you. I can't read your mind. And I am not a
Yeah.
psychic. I can't see into your exact experience and I'm not telling you what's happening. You're telling me. And then I'm encouraging you to step more into that and lean really hard into that, whatever's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So you then can become actualized and embodied in your experience and then feel more connected,
Absolutely.
more of yourself. And you feel confident as fuck because you're leaning into every single thing that the universe is throwing at you and you're not ignoring it or you're not stuffing it down. Yeah. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Also, there's one more thing I want to say about these modalities. Like astrology is a know thyself modality. Human design is a
Mm.
know thyself modality. Yoga, artistry, like ceramics, skateboarding, like But all of these modalities as well, like there's gene keys, there's all these other things. There's psychic, there's mediumship. These are all like these modalities and paths to know yourself better. Be more connected
Mm-hmm.
to yourself so you then can create the life of your dreams because you know what you want, you know who you are, and you know what fulfills you because you're connected to that. And astrology is a path
Yes.
where you can move down, move towards, observe, and then see the connections and say, wow, Pluto was moving through my first house for the first 5 years of my life. Holy shit. That was transformational. I was born on a Pluto line. I wasn't, but for example, like I was born on a Pluto line, and my work here in this lifetime is to, holy shit, is to transform and see the depths of my own being within the time that I'm living in this place. Astrocartography, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I find like what you made me think of was when I was, I don't know, I think this was mainly after college that I felt this like this huge frustration with figuring out my purpose. And like I
Yeah.
was overly obsessed with it. Like I couldn't get over it because it felt like nothing fit the bill. Like I wanted to do this like multitude of things. Like I felt just frustrated by this like Gemini energy in me, and I was like I'm so interested in two things that I really just want to do, but I don't want to be taken seriously in them, and but they're so not related, and I just was like so I was just like I I I was envious of people who just like had this constitution that felt like they knew what their purpose was, and I just was so fascinated by it.
Keyword felt
And
like they knew.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
We all
And
don't
then
know.
as I yeah, and I feel like as I grew, and I don't know if it was just kind of finding astrology to be the major, I don't know, the major foundation for me, like after kind of going through things and having it not work out, and like it felt like as soon as I really got into astrology was the moment that like I stopped being obsessed with purpose. And I don't know if there's like a correlation, probably directly, that I just kind of found the purpose in looking into my birth chart and understanding, oh, okay, like I'm I have two of the most important planets in Gemini, and I'm a Gemini sun and moon in Vedic astrology, and like I couldn't grapple with like this Gemini energy that I had. I was like, I thought I was just so like calm. I'm a Cancer. I like why do I have all this like stuff going on in my head at all times, and I always want to engage in all of it, and I have such a weird communication style, or I had these like thoughts about myself, and I'm just realizing now that it's like astrology and modalities like what Kate is saying can be a huge, can be just more of a world, like a big picture world that will eventually just uncover your purpose for you. I mean, at least that's what it was with astrology for me. And I'm kind of realizing it now, like in this conversation. I'm just like looking back and I'm like, yeah, I felt so lost. And then it just really coincided with my interest and my like deep dive interest into astrology that I finally felt like I had
The
now
purpose.
the backing of why I am the way I am, which is essentially what it
I
is.
I think also uncovering your purpose can be a dangerous path to go down, I will say, because you are never going to find the shiny thing and find the purpose. That will literally not happen because we are constantly on a path of self-discovery. And there's constantly more layers and layers to peel
Hmm.
back about ourselves, and that
Yes.
can become your purpose. That is your
Hmm.
purpose, right? That becomes
Hmm.
it. The path becomes your purpose because it's a path, right? And you may reach scenic viewpoints, and you may reach peaks and valleys and ditches and rivers through on the path of life. And you may find things on the way, but the path, the purpose is to walk the path of self
Yeah.
discovery.
Yeah.
And what astrology can show you is in what flavor you do that, aka the signs, or where
Exactly.
in your life, what areas of your life you do that, aka the houses, and how, which is the
Exactly.
combination of the two and the aspects, how you do that, what that looks like. And it really does depend too on the definition upon which you place each sign. And if you say, like, for example, you thought you were a cancer, you're a cancer, but you thought that that was like you're so sensitive and soft, and that's the whole of who you are. And realizing and coming to the knowing that, oh, I have every sign within me, within my psychology. Like I have every single sign because they're archetypes and we all have them, and they're just ways to describe psychology. So knowing about Gemini energy, you then were like, oh, I have a powerful Gemini energy in me in this incarnation. So that's coming out as anxiousness. And I can definitely tend towards these traits of balancing two things and not being able to make a decision, or like constant mental chatter that doesn't lead to anything but anxiousness, right?
And it's just now I'm thinking about it, and it's like the third house. I have Uranus and Neptune conjunct in the third house, so it's just like, yeah, I have all of these in me, and the purpose was to just not find the purpose, but the purpose was to say, okay, this is the path, and there is no purpose to be found. This is the way. This is basically the way to go.
This is the
And
way.
that feels so accurate. Yeah, that feels so accurate to how I experienced that time in my life.
So, what do we have coming up? What are we interested in talking about in the future on this podcast? Like, I feel like we are so new, and the people that are listening to us, what do
Yeah.
you guys want to hear? We have plans for sign
Yes.
astrology, evergreen astrology, where you can listen to interpretations that we'll pull cards with. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we also want to talk about this path that both Kate and I are on, which is entrepreneurship, um, and kind of attempting to live, not attempting, are, let me
Yes.
stop myself, are living aligned careers, aligned lifestyle in the way that we choose to attempt our careers. So that's also a subject that we would like to extrapolate on, talk about, and everything like that. So if there's any specific subjects within that that would shed light for people, we definitely want to know, and we definitely would love to talk about it.
So next month we've got two eclipses. So the last full moon, Aries and Libra, that was kind of the last moment until, well, the last moon, the last lunation until these eclipses. So October will be intense, but in a lot of good ways. So we will check back in 2 weeks and we will have some eclipse stories, perhaps, for you, and maybe some interpretations about the eclipse upcoming.
Cool.
Great.
Well, thank you
We'll
all
see
for
you guys next
listening.
time.
We appreciate it. And yeah, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.